464. That's how many stories featuring Spider-Man and his friends released in 2024. And I read 433 of them. Here are some of the best ones of the year in as much as best can exist in art. More accurately, these are my favourites ordered by vibes, by which story makes sense to talk about next. They're not in chronological order, they're not in favourite order, they're just in an order. There are 17 stories in total, because top 10s are for cowards. Here we go, mild spoilers ahead. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1. So yeah, let's talk about the obvious one first. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1 is one of the finest starts to a Spider-Man series. Not just this year, but maybe ever? It plays with our expectations of the world based on past Spider-Man knowledge, giving us an older Peter Parker, having Jonah yelling at a different Parker, and reintroducing that moment from Secret Wars, but with a different context. It's an issue that promises a lot and delivers some fantastic character work. Does the rest of the series live up to the quality here? For me, not so much. But we also have Ultimate Spider-Man issue 9. Ultimate Spider-Man hasn't exactly moved anywhere fast, and it jumps past a lot of interesting development with its monthly structure. But I felt like Ultimate Spider-Man issue 9 struck the exact balance. It had the slower character-based stuff of previous issues. It had a fantastic moment with my favourite journalist couple. It had Peter making some choices and a tease of the world to come. But then it also had actual action and a relationship with Green Goblin beginning to fray. It was just a very good issue of Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man issue 56. As Ultimate moves slowly, Amazing moves at a pace. Amazing Spider-Man issue 56 takes some uncharacteristic time. It's a longer issue after all, and it's setting up the final arc of Zeb Wells' run, but then it delivers one of the standout fights of the past few years. It's Peter locked in a limo with Tombstone trying to kill him. If he doesn't fight back, he's a dead man. If he fights back too well, his identity as Spider-Man is shot, which could be even worse than death. And so it's this hard, violent, close scrap, brilliantly choreographed by John Romita Jr. Worth the price of the emission alone, and the rest of the issue is as good. Amazing Spider-Man issue 50. Time to make the donuts. Now, I'm on record as a defender of the backup stories in any celebration issue of Amazing Spider-Man. I love that we get little stories from writers and artists that might not get this spotlight otherwise, to tell stories that we rarely have time to tell. My favourites are the moments of Spidey just helping out New York, and Time to Make the Donuts is a perfect example of that. We've got Spidey eating from food trucks, which is one of my favourite things for him to do. We've got Spidey learning about some of the other cultures that make up New York, and we've got someone directly advising Peter to just slow down once in a while. It's poetic and charming, and I loved it. Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin, issue 1. We've all heard the story of Spider-Man's origin, but what Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin does is take us back to that moment just afterwards, and explores some of the inner life that were missed as Lee and Ditko were whizzing past in their stories. The first issue is explicitly about the anger and the grief that Peter feels after the death of his uncle. Emotions we rarely saw in that early run. It's also about how grief creates a gulf between him and his aunt. I'm a big fan of stories that explore the great anger at the heart of Spidey, and this issue is a fantastic exploration of that, adding detail and nuance to those 60s stories we know so well. Spider-Boy issue 11. Spider-Boy as a series has been odd. It's always been fun as we explored good pun baddies and made Bailey a sidekick or sent him into the multiverse, but the stories have always felt like a fun diversion instead of anything meaty. Spider-Boy issue 11 is where the series really clicked for me. We start with a big emotional moment, a moment that we've been waiting for 11 issues, and then this issue just fills in Bailey's world. We meet the girl who loves Spider-Boy, and some other classmates, and a teacher, and his mum is setting ground rules, and Bailey's world suddenly feels grounded. It's a world filled with character and rich with potential, and it finally felt like Spider-Boy was home. Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider issue 4. The Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider series has also been an odd one. As great as the writing has always been, the early art felt rushed and unfinished. But a new artist came on board, and the first arc reached a pivotal point in Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider issue 4. It's a story about Gwen as a hero and what that means. She's facing a new power set and a villain with an uncontrolled power set, and it's how she chooses to deal with this. It's ultimately a story about empathy and the choices that heroes make, and Gwen makes the right one. Superior Spider-Man issue 8. But you know who else makes the right decision? Doc Ock. The latest series of Superior Spider-Man was very much designed to be a coda, tying together threads from Dan Slott's original run, especially around Doc Ock's love for Anna Maria. The final issue, Superior Spider-Man issue 8, is a heartbreaking one. To save the city from destruction that he wrought, Doc Ock has to lose a part of his mind. He forgets Spider-Man's identity, and most importantly of all, he forgets the woman that he loved. It's a moving story, while still able to have fun with Spider-Man history in the way that Dan Slott is really fond of. It makes the revisit of Superior worth it to me. Avengers Academy. Now this is my first cheat because I'm putting the entirety of Avengers Academy on here. It's all available on Marvel Unlimited and it has Normie Osborn in it, so it counts. It also has a large number of other Spider-Man characters, and it is my favourite series this year. It has taken a bunch of characters that I care very little about and made me care about each and every one of them with all of my heart. Every character has a moment and has a point in the team, and they all interact in this engaging and human way. It's a series about young heroes learning what it means to be a hero, while failing at that like a lot and stumbling towards right answers. It's about young people learning their place in the world, sometimes away from a toxic past, and about them finding a new family and new love with each other. It's earnest and it's silly, carved from the core of deep, deep Marvel history, but forging a new path that feels like nothing else that we've seen. It's also super romantic and super gay. If you take one thing away from this video at all, let it be this: read Avengers Academy. Amazing Spider-Man issue 55. With similar vibes around romance and learning how to be a hero is Amazing Spider-Man issue 55. This was a breather issue taking place between a big silly green goblin fight and a brutal bloody tombstone fight, and it was a wonderful encapsulation of who Peter Parker is in his entirety and also in that specific moment. He's probably not ever going to get his life together. The series would probably end before he could, but this date issue was a nice look at how he could, and helped set Shay apart from other romantic interests. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her, and I'm looking forward to more issues like this, where we take a breath. Spidey and his amazing friends. Another cheat, but for the best of reasons. There have been 3 issues of Spidey and his amazing friends released this year, if you exclude the free Comic Book Day book, and I bought and read every one with my son. They're simple stories, they're designed for very early readers, but it was the first comic book that I could buy him that he could read all by himself, learning how comic panels are arranged and being able to understand everything within them. And so it's a series that will always hold a special place in my heart, even though he's now reading at a Spider-Man Homeroom Heroes level. You know, parent brag. Venomverse Reborn issue 3, Cannibalism Comics. So Ryan North, one of my favourite writers, has a little webcomic for years about dinosaurs that is always the same panels with different dialogue and punchlines. And now, thanks to Venomverse, we have a Venom version about getting away with cannibalism because being a symbiote made you do it. And it's probably the hardest I've laughed at a single page all year. Venom War Zombiotes issue 3. The big event this year in Spidey's world was Venom War. And I would never have expected that my favourite comic from this event would be Zombiotes issue 3. Starring Shocker, She-Hulk and Hellcat, the series takes the story in a pulpy horror direction, playing as this big, bloody zombie movie, and that's a lot of fun. But it's made even better with this injection of heart and some fantastic writing about the nature of what it means to be a hero. It also has a heartwarming revival and reunion of a recently dead Spider-Man villain. Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099 issue 2. The premise behind this new Spider-Man 2099 series is that it's Miguel O'Hara fighting various monsters of the week, and it should have been pulpy and throwaway, just like Zombiotes. But instead, this second issue manages to do all of that, with a fun fight between Spidey and Dracula, and then also tell a story about a search for home. The writing and the art are fantastic, and it's an issue that manages to show an important aspect to all Spider-Man folk: empathy. Black Widow and Hawkeye issue 4. Before writing Spider-Gwen, Stephanie Phillips worked on a mini-series about Black Widow and Hawkeye and the former's new symbiote. This isn't high art, it's not going to go down in the comic book Hall of Fame, but it is wonderfully written and drawn, and it's a story about the past catching up with Natasha and Clint and how important their bond is. And then it also does the fun comic book thing of having Hawkeye wrapped up in the symbiote finally accepting that third wheel and using it to save his friend while looking really cool. And that's silly and that's fun, and I liked it a lot. I'm a simple man. Amazing Spider-Man issue 63. Zeb Wells wrapped up his run this year, and the next story is currently happening featuring old voices and new voices. Amazing Spider-Man issue 63 was the debut of Justina Island, and what a debut. It's a magical story with Spider-Man using the powers of Doctor Strange, but Island is able to keep it feeling Spider-Man, with a wonderfully scientific solution to a magical problem, and also some fantastic character interplay between both Shay, happy to see her back, and Black Cat. It's a confident first issue, and hopefully we'll see more of Justina in the writing credits of Amazing Spider-Man going forward, because boy, does that series desperately need more women writing it. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 12, and we wrap up our list with the last entry to be added, a Christmas tale from the world of Ultimate Spider-Man with a terrible sting at the end. It's rare that soap opera moments get this much breathing room, so it's refreshing to see it in this issue, even as I begin to pick up the silence of a certain character. It's a great little twist to end the first year of the series, and hopefully a sign that we'll begin to explore Peter a little bit more, so that he can't just be replaced by a silent figure. And those are my favourite issues of the year, and I'd love for you to read all of them. Honourable mentions go to Kid Ball and Spider-Boy, which might be the funniest issue I've read this year, and to Amazing Spider-Man issue 50, which was big and bombastic and comic booky, but there were already lots of Amazing Spider-Man on this list. Let me know in the comments below what were the comics that you liked best, maybe even ones that didn't feature Spider-Man, and join me on this channel every week as I read and recap every Spider-Man ever. Thank you and have a wonderful new year.